Hello everybody. Here goes a new masterclass on trauma and leadership. And this class, I'm going to explain some diagrams I drew up the other day because I feel that there isn't a lot of explanation out there about the process. I mean, you think of, I go to therapy or I go to coaching because I want to fix something. And sometimes you're going to find two types of coaches or therapists. Some are going to tell you what to do. And so they're going to define this action plan for you, or they're going to suggest some behaviors that you need to change. And they're going to try and push you and motivate you to get into those new habits. That is a lot of what coaching does. There is some therapy that does something similar. It's called um, conductual. In Spanish, it's called conductual. It's like it's focused on changing behavior. That will only work if there isn't a big trauma sitting behind the problem. If there's a big trauma sitting underneath the problem, there's huge emotions that are driving you to repeat the behaviors we're trying to change. Or they're driving you to select and feel comfortable with the same kinds of people with whom you always end up in the same situation. So it's not going to work if you don't resolve the trauma, right? So the other thing that a lot of people will tell you is, oh, the problem you're experiencing has to do with this thing that you're doing. And this thing that you're doing, you're probably not choosing to do it. And there's probably something going on. You're repeating something from the past. And that's how people who know what they're doing will slowly take you to there was a trauma, there was a situation that was traumatic for you, and this is why you're repeating the behaviors you don't want to repeat, or you're getting into the same kinds of problems with the same kind of people again and again. Okay. But then the idea is it's kind of linear, like you solve that trauma, your problem is fixed. And what usually happens is that it's more like going down the rabbit hole. You start looking into that trauma and then you find something else. And then you find something else. And then you find something else. So you have a process, you start a process, it's a path in which you have a new way of thinking and you're always questioning how much of what you're seeing around you has to do with what you're doing wrong or what you're not getting right. And you question that. And that is wonderful. It's a great start. Every time clients start a session with me and they tell me about what everybody else is doing wrong, I listen, okay, for a while because it might get long. And if it's getting too long and it's not productive because blaming other people doesn't resolve anything, it's very easy to see what other people are doing wrong. The difficult part, the challenge, and the one that resolves and actually changes things is looking at what you're doing wrong. Yeah. So once you get into this way of looking at life, you are a lot more effective in resolving the problems you have in front of you. But then the problems that you face are two kinds of problems. They have two kinds of causes, yes? There are causes that depend on what you can resolve technically, you can change a supplier, you can stop talking to this person, you can change your jobs, you can have a conversation to give and receive feedback, to discuss the issue and resolve it. You can both in business and in your couple and with your children. There's a lot of technical things, steps that you can take, be it send a message, be it change the way you behave, to see if that has an impact on the results that you're looking for. Once you've done that, and most people who are focused on self-improvement, they've usually done all of that, and they've done it compulsively for a long time, yes? And still the problem, it repeats. It's still there. and it's still happening again with different people, and you feel like something weird and magical is going on. No, it's not magical. It's just a repetition of trauma. That's the way trauma works. And so what we're going to look at is a path where you are continuously self-improving. You're looking at the layers and layers of information that continue coming up in your trauma resolution, in your path of self-improvement, of leadership development. I believe this is the only true and real leadership development. I mean, nobody needs to get lessons on how to get rich. You can go to an MBA, and then if you have a rich father, you'll get rich. If you don't have a rich father, chances are you won't get rich. I'm exaggerating it, but it's not all about knowing what to do. It's all about being in the right place, having the right connections, and then hiring the person who knows what to do. So you don't really need to do an MBA. You do an MBA more for the context than for the knowledge, because they squeeze so much knowledge into your head in 1 year that you forget 90% of it the following year. But anyway, I'm getting off topic as I love to do. So the idea is this, it's not a problem solved approach. It's a path on which you travel. And on that path, you're looking at the results that you get, at the outside results in every aspect of your life. And you're spending time to reflect on, how does this tell me what I still need to improve about myself? Yeah. And so in your path is where I drew a number of diagrams that I think are useful to understand how it goes. They're engineer diagrams, so I'll explain them. This is the first one, okay? It says trauma resolution process. And I don't know if you can read it correctly. I will see this when I see the video again. So we start here, and we start by spending time with ourselves. This is what mindfulness should be about. But you can call it whatever you like. I always tell clients that the most important thing, once they stop working with me, is to make sure they are making time to spend time with themselves. And that time can be spent journaling, or it can be spent going on a walk and just being alone with your feelings, with your thoughts, so that you can start, or you can continue to identify, what am I feeling now? And what's wrong about that, or what doesn't feel correct about that? Or what's worrying me? What am I worried about? What are my problems? Yes. And so in those reflections and those spaces that you spend with yourself regularly, so that's the most important thing. It's like good parenting, it's like everything in life. It's all about showing up. So if you show up to spend time with yourself, you're on the right path. Yeah. Once you're there, you're going to use the three tools that I've discussed in other videos and that I always talk about: attention, focus, breath, and movement. These are the three tools that I use in order to resolve and calm emotion. And I've used these three arrows to signify, this is an E for emotion. These three arrows are signifying the grounding component. You're always going to try to ground emotion, and grounding emotion might be about expressing it. That's why you need time with yourself, because if you're not with yourself, you don't have a safe space to release that emotion. So a walk in a park where nobody knows you, or a walk in nature, or just time on your own in your hotel room if you're commuting or if you're traveling, or just have a space in your home where you can be on your own and you won't be interrupted. And if you have those spaces, that's when your unconscious mind is going to bring up emotion, because it knows that that is a place where it can release emotion. Yeah. So you have to focus your attention on what's going on in your body and use breathing and movement to help that emotion move. And as you help it move, you're going to be able to ground it. When that emotion moves, when you're allowing it to spread through your body and to calm down, you're going to get more information about what happened. Why do I have an excess emotion in me? Where is this coming from? Is there a trauma here? Am I repeating a pattern? So this kind of information is going to come up in the sense you're going to remember things, you're going to connect information that you perceived the day before or weeks before even. You're going to go back to conversations and to meetings where you're going to notice something you hadn't noticed before. Why? Because you're moving the emotion. If you're not moving and calming the emotion, it clouds your judgment. It closes your filters, your shutters, yeah? So you can't see or you don't notice something about the other person's body language that you do begin to see once you've cleaned that emotion. Sometimes you even remember things that were said. And sometimes you just find stuff, like you find a photograph and it's like, oh, wow, this is pretty random. Well, it's pretty random, but it's not that random. It has to do with mobilizing yourself towards self-improvement and realizing that life helps you in the weirdest ways. You can call it a spirituality, you can call it randomness. I don't care what you call it. You can call it law of attraction, but it actually works. There's something out there that it works kind of like growing plants in your garden. You grow plants in your garden with the right conditions, you're going to get plants. You put seeds in, you put water, there's sunshine, you're taking care of them, plants will come out. They might die. They might not be the right plants for your conditions, but life happens, right? And the same thing kind of happens when you're planting seeds in your own self-development and your leadership development, is if you put attention in there, if you give yourself spaces and you learn to use your attention focus and your breathing and movement to release emotion, then life moves to help you in a way. Yeah. So as you release emotion, you're going to get information. And as you release emotion, you will continue to find new layers of emotion. And this here is very important, and we don't talk about this often enough. It's dreams. Dreaming is a very powerful resource to help you process emotion and process information, get more information and unearth more emotion. And that's because in our dreams, our rational brain turns off, it goes to sleep. Our consciousness goes to sleep. And so our unconscious mind, not only does a lot of the biologic healing processes in the body happen while we're sleeping, that's also very interesting. Muscle repair happens when we're sleeping, I read the other day. Stuff in our brains is information is repaired and stored, and learning happens better when we're sleeping. So there's a bunch of things that happen when we're sleeping. So emotional resolution of past trauma is also in a process of trying to be fixed or repaired when we're sleeping. And the only way we can intervene, and it's not so easy to intervene, it's something you kind of train with time, is remembering your dreams. A lot of people, when they start working with me, they never remember their dreams. They've never given any thought to their dreams. They just sleep like a log and wake up and they don't know what happened. Yeah. When they start to spend time with themselves, when they start to use their attention focus, their breathing and movement, and they start to pay attention to their bodies and their unconscious minds, then they start to remember stuff. Other people have recurring nightmares, and they've had them for a very long time. And those are very important too. Recurring nightmares and dreams are the stories that our brain is telling itself in order to repeat the scenario of traumatic situations. So all of our, well, not all of our dreams. There are some dreams that are completely random. Like sometimes I dream with the series I've been watching the night before. But the reason that I'm dreaming and the plot that I'm dreaming and the position from where I'm dreaming it, where am I in this story, is giving me powerful information. And it's also helping me bring up emotions that need to be resolved to the conscious surface. So anything that is not on the conscious surface is unconscious. And if it's still unconscious, it's frozen and it's hidden and I can't resolve it. I've experienced this during years in therapy where I've had a therapist telling me, Mm, I think that maybe something went wrong with you and your sexual development when you were small. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, what do you want me to do about this? I don't feel anything. I don't know anything. There's nothing there. If I can't feel it and I can't see it, I cannot resolve it because it's frozen. And in my case, what happened years after this therapist was trying to fix me is that many years later, when I had moved back to my parents' home, I had put all of my stuff into storage. I've told the story before. When I was in a place where I didn't have to go out to work every day to assure that I could feed myself and have somewhere to sleep, where I could let that go for a while because I was living back in my parents' home, which was not a happy ending at all. It was pretty tough in itself. But I had a certain kind of safety that I didn't have before. That's when the memories started to come up of yes, the emotions on the memories started to come up to the conscious surface. And in fact, the way I remembered that I had been the victim of sexual abuse at the hands of a family friend when I was 8 years old was in my dreams. I've told this story in Spanish in other videos, but I dreamt that I was going in the underground. I was traveling in the underground in Madrid, and I was wearing a skirt, and I had forgotten to put underwear on. And there were some boys coming after me and trying to touch me underneath my skirt. And I woke up in the middle of the night. Oh, what a horrible dream. I was super stressed and then I fell back asleep and I dreamt exactly the same dynamic in a different scenario. And when I woke up that morning, I thought there's something to this. Something did happen. And that's when I started looking for photographs and started asking questions. And I started doing a lot of body awareness exercises. So attention focus. I went back to this triangle. You're always going back to this triangle, focusing my attention on body sensations and using breath and movement to convert those body sensations into emotions. And that provided me information. One day, I was doing a body awareness exercise and I suddenly saw the face of the guy. I was lying on the bed and my knees were up. My feet were laid on the bed and my knees were up, looking up to the ceiling. And the next thing I saw his face between my knees. And it startled me so much because I hadn't thought of that person or talked about that person in 30 years. And I started asking questions around my family about that person, and everybody became really, really hostile. It was amazing. It was an amazing process. But that trauma, which was one of the traumas that I always say that it impacts people a lot because, sexual abuse is very strong and impactful. But in my case, it was just a cherry on the cake. At that point, I thought I was thinking linearly, I'm going to go in, resolve this trauma, and that's going to be the end of all of my problems. And that was in 2010, and I haven't finished resolving my problems 15 years later. So no, I still have problems, but I did fix, and I've talked about this in other videos in this series. That year, I did resolve the bulimia problem. The bulimia disappeared that year. Yeah. So the bulimia it was a pattern I was repeating where I disgusted myself. It was a way to express the disgust that an 8-year-old child feels when she's exposed to sexual behavior that she didn't ask for, she didn't desire, she doesn't understand, and she's participating in out of loyalty or manipulation or being manipulated into this is what friends do. Yeah. But the point here is that what you dream gives you information. And I just recommend writing it down because if you write it down, then you can come back to it. And as you think about it, you learn to ask the right questions. The questions you need to ask around your dreams are, how did it make you feel? That's the most important thing because your brain is generating a scenario and a plot even if it's borrowing from yesterday's series or for something, or sometimes I dream of politicians, yeah. And it's very surprising because I dream of politicians I don't like. I don't like most of them. Politicians are not my favorite kind of people, but I might dream of the ones that I like the least. I've dreamt of Donald Trump. I've dreamt of our president, our Spanish president, Pedro Sanchez. I've dreamt of Pablo Iglesias. It's really weird. Like the ones I dislike the most, but maybe that's why they appear in my dreams because I have extreme emotions about them. So the dream is about bringing in the story, the plot, and the actors that your unconscious needs in order to repeat the emotions of the trauma you're trying to resolve. And the trauma comes in layers. There might be one trauma, or it might be a long trauma with lots of layers in it. Okay. So each night when you go to sleep, your body, your unconscious mind is going to go and try to repair. And the way it repairs this kind of issues is by repeating. It repeats the story. That's why our worst nightmares are repetitive nightmares, because we've gone there. They're very extreme. They make us feel very agitated because they liquefy those frozen emotions that we could not access. As long as they're frozen in the unconscious, we can't resolve them. But dreaming allows us, it's like a safe space where our body can bring up those emotions, because once we wake up, we will disconnect from them. It's very interesting as a dynamic, yeah? So you need to ask yourself what you're feeling. Another important question is, where are you in the dream? Are you in the center of the dream? Are you an actor like in a film and the camera is following you and you're looking at everything and everybody from the center of the story? Or are you looking at the story from the outside, from the ceiling or from a screen, from a computer, from the outside? And that's very interesting because that will tell you that you're still disconnected. That is what survivors of violence or sexual abuse, what the brain does in order to survive that situation is disconnect the person and take the person outside of the center of the action. So many people see themselves from above or from a screen or from a place hidden inside the body where they can't get out of the body, no? So those are the questions you want to look at. And then you want to ask yourself how the plot, the storyline, or the feelings and the emotion relates to what you know about yourself, what's going on in your present situation, in your couple, in your parenting, in your job, in every area of your life. Okay, it's the same, you're repeating the same patterns in every area of your life because it's the same unconscious mind. You just repeat them with different levels of intensity. That's why they might seem like they're different things, but you're actually doing something very similar, right? So when you begin to find those patterns is when you're going to be able to resolve. And that's a lot of the information that is going to come out of dreams. So dreams are the way the body brings up a little bit more of information to the conscious surface so that you can feel it and you can see it and you can work with it. And from there, sometimes it is bringing up emotions that need to be grounded. So, for example, I might have, like right now, I'm still working through very deep layers of very primitive trauma, and I will have the same kind of plot with different scenarios, different people. I don't even remember the differences. I just know that last night I had very similar dreams to the last 2 or 3 nights. And I've realized that my ability to ground the emotion has improved over the 3 nights. So the first night I woke up very agitated, very out of myself. I needed a while to breathe again. I needed a while to use my attention focus, breathing and movement to relax, and then I might have fallen asleep again. Yeah. Then the next night I dreamt something very similar, but when I woke up, I immediately knew what it was about. And I knew I wasn't so out of myself anymore. So I was more grounded. Yeah. This is another interesting thing about dreams is that they go like in a crescendo of emotion. And when sometimes they reach such a high level of intensity that you wake up, because that's when you can't deal with that intensity of emotion and you disconnect. And when you disconnect, you wake up, right? But you wake up in that level of agitation. So having resources and techniques to ground yourself in the middle of the night is great. So it's sometimes I've had times of my life when I was waking up 3 or 4 nights a week at 3 or 4 a.m. and I was awake for an hour or an hour and a half doing stuff to calm myself, and then I would fall asleep for half an hour. So sometimes the intensity of the emotions that are coming up is huge, and you have to take it patiently and trust the process. Trust that your body is bringing up as much emotion as you can ground at that moment, and you're building your ability to ground yourself, to realize what it's about, to match the intensity of the emotion and the dream and the plot with what you're going through or with the trauma that you're trying to resolve. So it's very interesting. Like for years now, when I go to sleep, I always know that I'm going to do therapy when I'm sleeping because I know that stuff is going to come up that's going to give me more information. And that information will allow me to continue working. Yeah. So with your dreams, you're going to bring up more emotion and ground it. You're going to find out more information, and that's going to help you ground the emotion as well. Yeah. And then you repeat the cycle. So this keeps going until you hit a wall. And when you hit a wall, you're not advancing anymore and you're not finding any new information and you feel like you're stuck, like there's something that you're not seeing. And that's when you get help because you need another machine to repair your machine because your machine, when it was traumatized, it hid the information. It's frozen. So if you can't see it and nobody else can help you see it, you're kind of stuck. And that's going to happen a lot of times on your path of trauma resolution and leadership development. And it's good. It's fine. It means that you've done everything you could do on your own. But then you need to ask for help. And that is one of the things that most limits a lot of people in their coaching processes, and even to even go out and find a coach. They never ask for help. And not being able to ask for help or not feeling comfortable receiving help is a symptom of trauma in itself because we are mammal animals. We are designed to survive in groups by helping each other and by receiving help from other mammals. So our first instinct when we're born as mammal animals is to go look for our mother's boob. All mammal species do exactly the same thing. If they don't go look for their mother's boob, they're not a mammal animal. They're a turtle or a bird or something else. But if you're a mammal animal, the first thing you do the day you're born is go look for a boob. And if you experience problems looking for that boob, getting to that boob, finding that that boob is available to you and wants to help you, if she has postpartum depression, if she lost another child, if her mother's sick, if she's having a fight with your father, if that goes well, but then somebody falls sick and they're very worried, the entire first 7 years of your life, when you would instinctively, as a mammal animal, go and look for help from your parents, if they can't give it to you for whatever reason, okay, then you stop asking for help. You lose the ability and the instinct to go ask for help. Okay. So you kind of need to force yourself to go find help. And there is always going to be help out there. There's always some kind of help. Even a stranger at a petrol station could be help. You never know how talking to somebody could help you see something you didn't see on your own. It's really amazing. I still experience it all the time. So when you're looking for help, you're going to find a coach or a therapist, or some people like divination and spirituality, and that also works. There's lots of hoaxes going on in all of these areas, as you know. I saw a documentary the other day, the psychic swindler. So there's lots of swindlers out there, but there's also a lot of serious people. And some people like tarot cards, divination. I love tarot cards. I use them with clients who like tarot, but there's nothing scientific about it. It's all about symbolic thinking, and it's kind of similar to the dynamics that happen with a dream. So when I use tarot cards, I'm not reading anybody's future and I'm not making any guarantees. I'm using the cards to help the person see the parts of the problem, the dynamics and the patterns that they aren't seeing themselves. And it's always very fascinating. It always generates very fascinating conversations that do help the client go back and continue this process on their own for a while. Another resource that is very, very powerful and that I often recommend is family constellations, because family constellations work precisely with the symbolic thinking that happens in dreams and that the unconscious mind understands so well. So if you go to a group and family constellations, and I should have drawn another arrow here, which is random strangers or a mindfulness class or a therapy group or an online a telephone line you can call, or there's lots of free resources out there. As long as you connect to somebody who is real, not AI. An AI robot, I do not recommend at all, because an AI robot is what I would include here. You're still on your own with yourself, and you're using resources like with an AI robot who can provide information or can provide it's like a journal that talks to you, but there isn't another real person with you, okay? When you're looking for help, you want to use real people. Another resource that could come into this process when you're working with your own is working with animals or observing your relationship with your pets and with animals you encounter, because animals are their blind instinct and they're going to fall right into these patterns. Yeah. And sometimes I've also done a lot of coaching with horses, and I'll often, when I have clients online, their cat or their dog is going to appear, or their babies and the children are going to appear in the moment when we're touching upon something painful. They're going to appear to protect them. So there's often a lot of very interesting feedback coming from pets and from children, because they're mammal animals and they're very transparent and honest and loyal about how they relate to the stuff you're working on. Yeah. So these resources, these other people, be a professional coach or therapist, divination or spiritual guide of your preference, or family constellations, they are going to provide, they're going to help more emotion come up, and they're going to help information come up. And from there, you're going to start the process again. And you keep doing as much as you can do on your own until you hit a wall. And when you hit a wall, you go do another session. Okay. And that's this line going back here. And it's a spiral. So the path that you're doing when you're working on your trauma resolution, um, as a way to improve the results you're getting in your life, it's not a guarantee. There's never a guarantee in this kind of work. Okay. But you are going to realize, you are going to notice that you are more balanced when you react to problems in your life, that you are more able to react, you're more adaptable, you don't get lost in a fight with yourself about being good or bad. And you don't go into spirals when things happen around you. And some of the things that happen around you get better, and some of them help you fine tune yourself to learn to live with that level of uncertainty, for example. No, I mean, I've been wanting to solve my problems with uncertain finances and money for years now, and what they haven't become resolved. I live in an enormous amount of uncertainty, but I still have a house to live in, and things actually end up resolving themselves somehow. It's always pretty magical. What has changed is my ability to live with that amount of uncertainty without getting stressed about it. It's pretty amazing. So it's actually been something that's been training me, and I hope, I don't know, that all of this training is necessary for something. And when I see the way the system, our economic system is kind of falling apart, and our social system is kind of falling apart in Europe. There's all of this stuff happening with AI, with politics, with uncontrolled immigration, with all of this ideology, all of this craziness on social networks and Instagram and TikTok, and it's all very crazy right now. So I think that I'm a lot more prepared to guide people to make sound decisions in amazing levels of uncertainty or even system collapse than I was 15 years ago. And that is thanks to enduring a lot of uncertainty and learning to calm myself down, ground my own anxiety, ground my own fear, and recognize when I'm ready to make sound decisions and when I can't trust anything my brain says because I'm floating, I'm still spiraling in a very intense emotion. No? And so you continue this, it's a perfection, it's a spiral where each hoop is going into a deeper level of detail, more fine tuning, and you're growing as a person and as a leader. This is another diagram that I drew the other day, and I think it's very interesting to look at trauma this way because we have a lot of people looking at this. Trauma is loss. Yes, trauma is loss. Trauma is a life-altering event or a life-altering situation in your life that is going to it's going to derail you onto an entirely different path to what you thought you were going to be or you wanted to be. Yes. But it's something that can become a superpower. So before trauma happens, this is the picture of an iceberg where there is no separation between what the water covers and what the covered water doesn't cover. At the beginning, um, everything is reacting and adapting very fluidly inside of us. And so we have an ability to respond in the full range. We can be super aggressive, we can be super loving, we can be super negotiating. We can travel the entire spectrum of emotional responses and reactions to any situation we encounter. When trauma happens, it breaks us and it freezes parts of our response. That's why we call it trauma. And what happens there is that the spectrum of response is reduced. So you see now the iceberg is separated. There's a part of me that's frozen that I can't see. And also I'm broken. So there's two roles inside of me. There's the survivor and there's the victim. And they fight a lot with each other, right? And that means that I lose a part of the spectrum of flexibility or adaptability that I used to have. And now I can only move in this small space instead of being able to be fully assertive, for example, or totally generous, for example. I lose that ability. I can only move in this small from 50 to 100 or from 90 to 100. I can't move in the 10, 20, 30, 40. Yeah. In this loss of the possibilities in the spectrum, I lose perception. So I get blind spots. There's a lot of stuff I can't see. And no matter how much somebody tries to come and explain it to me, I can't see it. I don't believe it because I can't see it, right? The way I interact, I also lose an ability. Does it say? Oh, sorry, it's interpretation. The way I interpret the information is also distorted. So my thinking, my feeling, I either I either think or feel too much or I'm numb and I don't think or feel anything. So I'm dysregulated. I can't do something in between overthinking blah, 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 or feeling nothing, not seeing anything and acting as if it never happened, right? So my thinking and feeling, the way I interpret the information I get is also distorted. And so my actions are also my actions, the way I react, what I say, what I do. There's patterns of error. Okay. So all of this happens when I go through a trauma. And if I resolve the trauma, this is the spiral here again. When I resolve the trauma is when I become somebody with infinite abilities to adapt and to react. And when I can move anywhere in the world, I can do it all. I've lost my fear. I don't get blocked anymore. I don't fight with the obstacles I encounter. I adapt perfectly to them and rapidly to them. I don't get stuck for 3 years in a depression, or I don't get stuck 10 years in denial where I don't want to see that this is the wrong husband for me. And that is when I develop a superpower because I have reached a level of knowledge and adaptability and endurance and resilience that I didn't have before I was broken. I only get it because I've been broken and frozen for a while and I've been able to resolve those cracks. And that's when I become a superpower, a super person, a super version of myself. And that's when I become a true leader. Yeah. This diagram is another way of saying kind of the same thing. When the individual goes through trauma, he loses or she loses context information. We lose processing ability. We lose sensitivity, so we lose pleasure, and sometimes we lose health, and we lose flexibility, mobility, and ability to move. Our movement is also suffered. So it's very interesting how trauma affects your brain, but it also affects your body. And as time goes by, the injuries you get in and the spectrum of response that you lose, it also shows up in your body. You lose mobility, you lose flexibility. Apart from what you would lose by getting older and by the biologic processes that degrade bone or muscle or cartilage, etc., the way you move and use that machinery, it's a biologic process that makes it erode quicker or fast or slower. And so you lean more on one side of the foot, you lean more on one knee, and because you're doing this all the time in all of your movements, that impedes, that develops arthrosis, or you injure yourself, and so you lose mobility on that knee or that hip or whatever you were using. Yeah. When you resolve trauma, when you go through this spiral, this movement that allows you to bring up the old emotions, express them, feel them, and release them, and accept, understand the information of what happened, you are going to recuperate. So big arrows up, a lot of more. You're going to resolve your trauma. You're going to recuperate. Now you see all of the information. You no longer have blind spots. Your thinking and your feeling and the way you process the information you get is no longer going to be distorted or slow or avoiding. You're going to see things as they really are, and you're going to come up with solutions very fast. Your sensitivity and your pleasure and your ability to experience joy, they're also going to grow a lot of arrows up, and your health will also improve. I haven't put so many arrows here because, you're not going to become a 20-year-old when you're 60. That's not going to happen. You're a 60-year-old. Let's be real. But you will probably see improvement in some of the symptoms that have, for example, I used to have terrible ulcers when I was young. Well, I had bulimia, so I had a bunch of stuff. But like pains I've had, sciatica, stuff like that, I've forgotten about them. Some of them I still have. I had teeth grinding and lots of problems, gingivitis, stuff like that with my gums. All of that has cleared, for example. So I have improved my health, but I'm still 53. Yeah. And you're going to increase your flexibility and your ability to move as well. And I have, this is very interesting because I had so many layers of trauma. After I found the cherry on the cake, I had to work through all of the other layers that made me a perfect candidate to be the cherry, a perfect candidate for sexual abuse. As I resolved all that, I slowly learned over the years how unable, how disconnected I was from my body's movement and how I didn't trust my instincts at all. So I was always terrible at sports when I was small, when I was growing up. And now I'm great. I mean, I'm not an athlete and I'm not super strong, but I love to take on new sports and learn new dynamics of balance and new. I'm very good at adapting to new movements. I learned rowing last year. This year, I got a thing called a half bike, which is very different to a normal bike. And slowly I get with it. Well, I've learned skiing as an adult. I learned horse riding as an adult. All of these things were part of me recuperating my ability to move, to coordinate movement, and to react to gravity and to everything a horse can do, for example. All of that improved a lot as I went through the spiral of resolving my layers of trauma. Yeah. And so what happens is that you ignite your wisdom, your fluidity, and your inspirability because you do become inspiring, because you're happy, because you're joyful, because you don't fall down with obstacles, because you don't bring conflicts to situations, you bring solutions, you understand where conflictive people are coming from, and you can determine whether that conflict is something that you can resolve or it's something beyond resolution because it has to do with their unresolved traumas. Yeah. So you become a superhero, you become a super person, and you really ignite your wisdom is your ability to make sound decisions and logical, serene interpretations of what's happening around you so that you can help people and you can guide them towards the right steps. Maybe not the solutions, but at least towards steps that will help everybody survive a bad situation and then rebuild. Yeah. So those are just some systemic or global bird's eye views of how trauma, how you're going to be working through your trauma as you go on in life. And I recommend it because it's not a linear fixed solution, which is a fantasy that's not the way it works. It's a continuous improvement where the result is a much more interesting and much more inspiring and funny and joyful, playful version of yourself. You really look at life like children building sandcastles on the beach, where yes, the waves are going to take away the sandcastle, but oh, the joy of building it until that happens. And there's a lot that we can do in the world and help out with all of our current planetary problems if we learn to approach each of our professions. We're all needed in every industry and every specialty. If we each approach the problems from our area of expertise, having resolved our traumas and thinking from a place of grounding, serenity, and wisdom instead of trying to solve the problems from our trauma when our trauma is driving our mind. Yeah. So hope that helps and see you another day when I have another idea for one of these master classes. Ciao, ciao.